And as the territory deals with young Chadil Parsons' death and what appears to be a suicide, many are asking what can be done to help someone who is suicidal. Facebook friends of the 16-year-old have been pouring out their grief on his timeline after reports of his death at his home in Mount Healthy on October 26th. Hours before his body was discovered, his Facebook post reflected frustration about personal challenges. However, some of his friends told JTV News that Chadil appeared normal and they didn't suspect that he was having challenges. JTV News spoke with marriage and family therapist Dr. Cindy George to find out how to identify the warning signs of someone who is suicidal.
Depression is a major factor in suicide. We have feelings of hopelessness, feelings of helplessness. The person may be feeling as if they aren't worth anything. We also have feelings of isolation. The person may feel as if they're not understood. A lot of times we see persons who really want to share what they're feeling with others, but they can't because they feel that people may not understand what they're going through. Persons with suicide really tend to have a sense of, this is the only way out. Whatever I'm feeling, whatever I'm going through, it must be better if I die. You might see persons who would typically be with friends and family and then they isolate themselves, they withdraw. We might see persons really behaving in a way that is having a lot of mood swings. We may see their personality might even change. And also we see the person really fixated on death. They might be talking about it. They may be having a lot of images, whether looking at it on the computer, drawing it, or talking about it, images of death. And if we're looking at teenagers specifically, we may see teenagers who are really trying to discover a sense of who they are. And a lot of times we see teenagers maybe experimenting with their sexuality, drugs, different religions, things like that. And if their parents or friends aren't really understanding that, it really makes them feel a sense of not being understood and not loved.
Within recent times, there have been at least 3 cases of suicidal deaths in the Virgin Islands. According to a February 2012 Youth Health and Sexuality Survey conducted by the Ministry of Health and Social Development, 62% of 1,609 young people between the ages of 12 to 19 admitted to having tried committing suicide on 1 or more occasions. 73% were females and 51% males.
You know, I think a lot of times when we think of suicide, we think that it may be something for the weak person. But we have to recognize that even though somebody might have had some of those symptoms before in terms of maybe being quiet, maybe being isolated, or being shy, that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen to persons who are popular, to persons who are well-liked, to persons who have a lot of friends, who seems to have it all together. Because when suicide comes, it can be triggered by anything. It can be triggered by breakup. It can be triggered by a bereavement. It can be triggered by failure of high expectations. And so we want to look at that and we just want to be observant. And the key is change in behaviors. The key is change in behaviors and not taking for granted that, oh, they're just going through something or they're just having a little breakup. But really just being mindful and just communicating and asking them what's happening. And then also recognizing that whatever that person is, whether adult or adolescent, we have to meet them where they are in their context and try to understand what they're going through, even though we may not see it their way. And I think that's a big key, because a lot of times it's just a feeling of misunderstanding and I can't deal with this.
Suicide is now among the 3 leading causes of death among persons aged 15 to 44. The World Health Organization estimates that suicidal deaths will increase worldwide, and because suicidal thinking doesn't get better on its own, persons must get help.
Sometimes we ask ourselves, could I have prevented my loved one from committing suicide? And a lot of times, we get guilty about that. We cannot necessarily prevent them, but we can help in the process, on the progress of how they do get to that point. For example, in our connectedness and in our communications with our loved ones, we may, as an example, want to begin somewhat of a contract with them. And what I mean by that is we can say, well, let's begin to have lunch. Let's set up a lunch date every other day. Let's go to the movies every Saturday. And what you're doing is you're developing a sense of connectedness to that individual whereby they become obligated to other things and their sense of belonging becomes more. And you can take these opportunities to begin to speak to what is frustrating them, what is hurting them, what is on their mind. And so it's really a strategy to allow that loved one to stay connected, to not be alone. Because again, persons that are left alone are more than likely to commit suicide than someone who is surrounded by loved ones.
If you know or suspect someone who is suicidal, you can reach the BVI Health Services Authority's Crisis Intervention Team by calling 852-7670. The team will provide assistance in various ways, including visiting your home.